Good evening, good day, everybody, and welcome back to the Ask Abhijit show. My apologies to those of you who are confused by the timing. It's supposed to start at 9 p.m., but I think in the scheduling, I put it at 8 p.m. So, apologies to those of you who had to wait for the show, and thank you so much for waiting and being on this live stream. So, I have got a lot of questions in the comments. There's so much happening in the world, and a lot of very relevant questions that you all have asked in the comments. So I'm going to take a whole bunch of the questions from the comments this time and also some questions from the live chat. So that's what I'm going to do. And I do know that many of you don't have the time to watch an entire live stream, whether it's live or recorded. Many of you may not be interested in every question that I answer. You want to see selected questions. So for those of you who need that, I would like to tell you that I have this channel called the Abhijit Chavda Clips channel that is over here, and it's also pinned on top of the live chat. You want to see any question that I've answered, any specific question, a clip of that, you can check it out over here. A bunch of clips come out every single day. Typically, something that was answered quite recently in the past week or so. And if you want to search for something, let's say you want to search for UFOs, you can search for UFO, for example, and you will get that. You want to search for ISRO, you can search for ISRO and find questions about ISRO. Search for China, you can find questions about China, and so on. So that's the Abhijit Chavda Clips channel. Please be aware of that, and please go ahead and subscribe if that's something that interests you. All right, so that's gonna be helpful in case you want answers to specific questions. All right. Before I begin, let me greet all of you who are there on the live stream. I can see Shagun Chopra, Ashish Pandel, Anant Pai, Mahesh Patil, Ombe Kerikar, Matrix, Janavi, Jai Hind, Ayers Manticore, Khushi Sharma, Krishna 14, Vinay Esman, Sparkling Lotus, Mriganka Bonia, Punjab Story, Sudhindra Desai, Lavanya Bhatnagar, Geopolitical Dube, Ritik Chaudhary, Tripti Patil, Jay Dikshit, Rahul Dunakhe, Manoj BN, Jasman Raj Singh, Angad Singh Oberoi, Ronak Jain, Aru and Avyansh, Threat Ripper, hello, Steric Bay, Tej Mehta, Xmas, Ymas, Zmas, Prakhar Gupta, Baba Abhijit Chavda, Arefin, Shuvo, Mriganka Bonia, and lots of other people. So, with that said, let's get into the questions. Let me take some questions that you have asked in the comments. Let's take that, a couple of those in the beginning, and then we'll take some questions from the live chat, and we'll alternate in that manner. So let's begin with this question. I mean, it's an issue that's on top of everybody's mind these days, especially in the subcontinent. So it's by Pranay Paul. Bangladesh's border guards crossing into India to halt the construction of a mandir after ethnic cleansing, no less, is deeply troubling. Why does India tolerate such actions, despite the fact that it's well known that the US may be behind these provocations? Is the Biden administration trying to stir things up before handing over to Trump? And if that's the case, how much should India tolerate? It's hard to believe that we still live in a truly sovereign nation with these challenges. Okay, so what's happening in Bangladesh right now? We know there's been a regime change. Old news now. Hasina gone, and Mohammed Yunus, this puppet guy, has been put in place, and he's the face of the government, which is being run by a bunch of well, forces that are very strongly inimical to India and very friendly with Pakistan. So, like I've said ton of times, Bangladesh is now East Pakistan, and they are provoking India in a variety of ways. The most recent provocation was Bangladeshi border guards crossing over into Indian territory and halting the construction of a temple, a Hindu mandir, because it's somehow offensive of them. Well, mind your own business, stay in your territory. But yeah, they crossed over and halted the construction of a temple, right? And obviously, it's such a long border, a very open, porous border that we have with Bangladesh, with East Pakistan, that you can't have the BSF and the army, etc., everywhere at every point in the border. So these sort of things, well, they can do it. So what should India do? And are we completely important? Are we a non-sovereign nation? And what exactly is happening? And a lot of people are saying that India should think about military action. Go ahead and do military action and save the Hindus. There's a Hindu genocide happening in Bangladesh. Lots of Hindus have been killed, lot of atrocities and whatnot, and the media won't report that. Yeah, so all that is happening. So what should India do? Should India go ahead and take military action? How long will we tolerate this? That's the question on everyone's mind. So understand this. Uh, Bangladesh, as you all understand very well, they are now a proxy of the US. Okay, they are a proxy of the US, and they are trying their best to provoke us. The provocations by Bangladesh, the objective is to instigate the Indian public against the government of India. And by doing this, by instigating the public and making the Indian citizenry extremely angry, this it's going to put a lot of pressure on the government of India. Right? Everyone's frustrated, everyone's tired, everyone's angry. So the objective, the hope that they have, the Bangladeshis, okay, the proxies of the US, the hope that they have is that this will pressurize the government of India enough to force some kind of military action. Now, understand this. We have taken military action in the past, 1971. But when we liberated East Pakistan and converted it to Bangladesh after military action, after war, that war took 8 to 9 months of very intense and deliberate planning, preparation. The Indian army in the 71 avoided the monsoon. See, Bangladesh is a very defensible country. Let's take a look at them. Okay, let's not look at the map. You can look at it in your own free time. Bangladesh is a very defensible country geographically. It has lots of marshes. It has lots of rivers. Some rivers are miles wide. It's not a piece of cake to just walk into the country and take it. Of course, it's possible. It's not like they've got some very powerful army or anything, but it's a very defensible country. In the when the Americans invaded Vietnam, they thought it would be a walkover, and it was a disaster for them. The US military is incredibly, even at that time, was incredibly more powerful than the Vietnamese military. And yet the Vietnamese were able to defeat the Americans. So that's what we have to understand. If you want to take military action, it's going to take months of preparation and planning. And you're going to have to do it in a very specific manner. And they'll be aware of this, right? So, and while we were planning the war during those 8 or 9 months in 1971, about 3 million Hindus were killed in Bangladesh, right? And now this action that we took, the military action, it succeeded. To a certain extent, it succeeded because we had help from the people of Bangladesh. They were tired of the atrocities that the Pakistanis were committing. So we had internal help from Bangladesh, for the Bangladeshis. And we obviously armed them, the Mukti Bahini. We created the Mukti Bahini, we trained the Mukti Bahini, we armed them. They acted as a resistance against the Pakistanis, and that obviously had a certain small amount of impact on the war, right? And in 71, our army bypassed all the cities, all the towns, all the centers of resistance. We bypassed it all. We bypassed all those centers. If we do it again, the question is, what's going to happen to all the Hindus who are living there? What's going to happen if we bypass the cities and we go straight for Dhaka? What will happen in the cities to the Hindus and in the towns and the villages? We don't think about that, right? So the thing is, we in India, we watch Hollywood movies, and we think we can behave like the Americans behave in those movies. The real world doesn't work that way. We can certainly flatten a nation like the US if we want to. I mean, but do we want to do that to Bangladesh? Of course not. That's not how we operate. That's not how civilized people operate, right? So you do that, there's going to be a slaughter in Bangladesh. And then the West, they are waiting for this. They're waiting for India to make a mistake. That's why they have dislodged Hasina, evicted her, and replaced her with Mr. Mohammed Yunus. Their hope is that they can push India into a conflict. And then that will give them the justification to destroy India economically. Okay, India's economy is a growing economy. It's a rising economy. And it's a long-term problem for the Americans because they don't want any new rising economies, any new big nations, any new big economies, powerful nations. So they are waiting for the chance that gives them the justification to destroy India's economy. They are waiting for this to happen. And that's why the Bangladeshis are provoking us. Bangladesh is a proxy. Just like Ukraine is a proxy in America's war against Russia, similarly, Bangladesh is a proxy. And they want to use Bangladesh against India the same way they are using Ukraine against Russia. Okay? So so if we do something silly like military action or something, it will be hell for India. And in 1971, the Americans, obviously, they denied that there was any genocide happening in East Pakistan. They denied that there was anything being done against the Hindus, atrocities or genocide or murders or massacres. They kept on denying it, even though they knew what was happening. And they are doing the same thing right now. Their media is reporting nothing of what's happening in East Pakistan. So they will say that nothing is happening, and India attacked peaceful, helpless Bangladesh. Hindu nationalist India attacked peaceful, helpless Bangladesh. That's what they will say, and then they will throw a ton of sanctions on India, and that will destroy the Indian economy. That is the objective. All right. So we in 71 decided that Bangladesh will be a separate nation. We had conquered it. We were in Dhaka. We had taken control of the entire nation, but we chose to make it to give it its independence. We could have reabsorbed East Bengal at the time. It has always been our territory. We chose to keep it separate and to give it independence. Well, now we have to deal with the consequences of that action. Today, Bangladesh is a separate nation, theoretically a sovereign nation, practically a US vassal, a US puppet, and it's a proxy that they're using against India. So we are surrounded by two nations, East Pakistan, West Pakistan, and they want us to make a mistake. So my point is, sit back, relax, stop getting I know it's obviously painful to see what's being done to the Hindus, but at this point in time, we cannot take any overt action. We can take covert action possibly, which I will not go into. That's up to the government. We are a sovereign nation. We very much are a sovereign nation. What's happening is happening outside our territory. So at this point in time, we have to swallow the anger, swallow the pain, and not give the Americans the justification or the pretext to do what they really are itching to do, to damage India's economy. So these provocations will happen. I think the provocations could escalate. We could take some action, localized action against such provocations, to tell them that certain red lines cannot be crossed, the Bangladeshis. But that's about it. And even if we take action against the Bangladesh border guards or something, kill a few of those because it entered our territory, it's going to be an international incident, and the West will condemn India. So that is the position we are in. At this point in time, the situation calls for calm, for patience, for restraint. Bide your time. India has to bide its time. We're going to have a lot of this in the next 10, 20 years. We have to find a way to navigate the world the next 10, 20 years. There's going to be increasing pressure upon us. And Bangladesh is one of those focal points of the pressure. So that's the situation in Bangladesh vis-a-vis us. And this is what we have to do. So there we are. Okay, next question, very relevant question. A bunch of questions. A lot of people have asked me this. So I've taken 2 or 3 of these questions as something that represents all the questions that people have. So Ankita, Divyansh, Vikram, Geopolitical. They asked the question, ultimately the Assad regime in Syria has collapsed as per the news channels. How will this impact the region geopolitically? What is the real agenda and objectives of the power supporting rebel group? Why is the Assad-led government in Syria losing control over territories? Few years ago, when ISIS tried to do it, the Putin intervened and saved the Assad government. But why have the rebels been able to get success this time? And what's Turkey's stance in the whole Syria situation? It being a member of NATO is pressured by the West to act anti-Russia. It is infiltrated with Syrian refugees, and Assad has denied to take back his own people. Okay, what's happening vis-a-vis Turkey? What's happening, and so on, right? So that's the question. Okay, so I think for that we should take a look at the map. So where's the map? Let me open the map, because the map is our friend and that helps us understand a lot of things. So here's the map. Let me take the question off the screen for a while and let's zoom into where the region that we're talking about. So we're talking about Syria. Syria is this nation that's in the center of the screen right now. Now, what's happened? Uh, Last 24 hours, the Assad regime has finally fallen. Bashar al-Assad, we don't know about his whereabouts. Apparently, he took a plane from Damascus and was going somewhere, but apparently the plane disappeared off the radar. Did it crash, or was it its transponder switched off? We don't quite know, but his whereabouts are not known. Zalmai Khalilzad is alleging that he may be somewhere in the UAE. So he hasn't shown any evidence to substantiate his claim, but that's what he claimed on Twitter. Zalmai Khalilzad was the US special representative for Afghanistan, who negotiated with the Taliban in Doha and all that, right? So we don't know where Assad is, but the rebels or the terrorists or Al Qaeda or ISIS or whoever they are a US proxy force. They have, or Turkish proxy force, whatever you want to call it. They have taken over Syria. They probably have taken control of Damascus. So that is what has happened. So understand what's happened so this is obviously another successful regime change operation conducted by the United States. These armed forces, whatever you want to call them, rebranded ISIS, rebranded Al Qaeda, and so on. They are proxies of the US and proxies of Turkey. The Turks have had a presence in northern Syria for quite some time. It's a region that's rich in oil, so the Turks have been enjoying that oil, obviously. And the Russians have had a presence in Syria. Look, the civil war in Syria began in 2011, and you may remember the time that Al Qaeda was fighting the Syrian government, and ISIS suddenly emerged out of nowhere. It was obviously a creation of the US, okay, and the Assad regime was under tremendous pressure, and then Putin from the north, from Russia, stepped in, and he saved the Syrian government, the Assad government, from being overthrown. The Russians have a naval base in Latakia, and they have an air base also in the western part of Syria. So that is a question mark now. What's going to happen to the Russian presence in Syria? But overall, the American proxies have taken over Syria, and as we speak right now, one hears that Israel is now making a move on Syrian territory. They are moving eastwards. Israeli tanks have apparently crossed the line of control from the Golan Heights into Syrian territory. So the Israelis may create most likely a larger so-called buffer zone right now by gobbling up large parts of Syrian territory. So that's what we're gonna see now. And the terrorist groups or militant groups that have taken over Syria, they have close links with Turkey and obviously the US as well. So this is another successful regime change operation by the US. So in the past 3 or 4 years, since 2020, what regime change operations have we seen in the overall large Asia region? We have seen a regime change operation in Afghanistan, a handover of power to the Taliban by the Americans. And the Taliban are getting weekly stipend and funding from the US. So the Taliban are a pro-US regime, a US proxy regime. So the US has conducted a successful regime change operation in Afghanistan. Then in 2022, they conducted a successful regime change operation in Pakistan by ousting Imran Khan and bringing in a pro-US puppet government. Then there is this new recent coup in Bangladesh, which has brought in a US puppet government. So India is surrounded by East and West Pakistan. There is an ongoing operation in Burma. It's a proxy war between American forces and Chinese proxies. And the Americans seem to be winning, and they are trying to carve out an artificial cookie land for Christ out of Indian territory and Burmese territory. So that is another operation that is ongoing. And now we have this regime change operation in Syria. So right now, in the Middle East region, in the West Asia region, apart from Iran, you only have US proxies, nations that are firmly on the side of the US. In 2003, they wiped out the Saddam Hussein regime, and Iraq now is a US proxy with some amount of influence from Iran because of the Shia population. But Syria has fallen now. So, and why did this regime fall? The Bashar al-Assad regime, why did it fall? So let's go back to that question. Why did this regime fall? So the Assad regime First of all, Bashar al-Assad never wanted to be president. Okay, it's old history. It's nothing to do with what's happened right now. His brother Basal al-Assad was supposed to be the next president after the father Hafez al-Assad would demit office or pass away. But Basal al-Assad died in a car crash, and Bashar al-Assad, who was an eye doctor in London, had to reluctantly come back to Syria, and eventually he became the president. Now, the al-Assad family belongs to the Alawite sect in Syria. Syria is a mishmash of various ethnic groups and religious groups, and the Alawite sect is less than 10% of the Syrian population, but they are the elite, and they've been ruling Syria for the past 50 plus years as part of the Baath party. It's a dictatorship, obviously. Only dictatorship works in West Asia. Nothing else works. That's the nature of the region. So now, after the civil war started, the US mediated, US induced civil war started in 2011. Uh, it's because of Russian intervention and Iranian intervention that the Assad regime survived. So they have had help from outside, support from outside, but did they have support from inside? They probably did not have support from within the Syrian population. There must have been lots of disaffected ethnic groups and whatnot. So eventually, this happened. What's happened now has happened. So Iran has lost a huge, a very major piece on the geopolitical chessboard. They no longer have any influence now in Syria. Syria is gone, and it was through Syria that they were able to, maintain the hold that they have in Lebanon or the Hezbollah and all that. So Syria is gone. So they no longer have physical access to Lebanon. If you look at the map once again, let's go back to the map. Where's the map? Let's go back to the map. So if you look at the geography, Iran is the nation in the center. West of Iran, you have Turkey in the northwest, and you have Iraq. Now, Turkey is not a friendly nation to Iran by any means, but in Iraq, the Iranians have lots of proxies. So they were able to access Syria via Iraq in a variety of ways, clandestine, covert ways, overt ways, whatever. And through Syria, they were able to have whatever contacts and access they had to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Now Syria is gone, and Lebanon, Hezbollah is very badly weakened. The West Bank is essentially destroyed. The Palestinian Hamas resistance is mostly crushed by Israel. So all the Iranian proxies are kind of now enfeebled or destroyed. The last piece of the puzzle is Yemen, the Ansar Allah faction, the Houthis, which are also an Iranian proxy, but now Iran mostly stands alone in the region. So it is a victory for the US. It's a victory for Israel. Israel will probably now grab large bunches of Syrian territory and call it a buffer zone. Okay, that's how geopolitics works. So the Americans are making things happen at a very rapid pace now. And what next is the question. Next, I would say, is Iran. Iran will now come firmly in the crosshairs of Israel and the United States. Now, Russia and China cannot afford to let Iran fall. That's the deal right now. So that is the situation. Turkey is very much involved in this. Turkey, some would say Turkey has backstabbed Putin. What's his name? Erdogan has backstabbed Putin or whatever. It's not the case. He's simply acting out of his own interest, which every nation does. So Turkey is involved in this. Their proxies are in control in Syria. The Assad regime is gone. We don't know about the whereabouts of al-Assad and his family, but that's where we are. So it's a complete transformation of the geopolitical balance of power in the West Asia region. It's very much advantage US, advantage Israel. Russia has withdrawn. Russia has been bogged down, you could say, and completely preoccupied with the situation in Ukraine. In the meanwhile, Israel smashed Hamas, smashed Hezbollah, and that's how they were able to make this happen. And it looks like there may have been some kind of deal that was offered to the Syrian army, because it looks like they gave up without a fight, just like the Afghan army gave up without a fight to the Taliban. The same sort of thing seems to have happened. So either a deal was given to Assad that will allow you to escape, and the same deal was given to the Syrian army. Apparently, lots of tanks from Syria, the Syrian army tanks, crossed over into Iraq. Apparently. So we're not quite sure what's happened. What are the mechanics and dynamics of what has happened? What was the deal that was offered or not? Eventually, maybe some clarity may come a few years down the line, but that's where we are. So the whole balance of power now has changed. It's very strongly advantage US and Israel in West Asia, and this affects the rest of the world in a variety of ways. So that's the situation, and we'll keep a watch on this. We'll keep an eye on this. Okay, Mr. 88er says, does India's independent foreign policy also hinder its power projection capability in the neighboring region? The fact that nations like Nepal, Maldives, Bangladesh, etc., can make statements and do activities that are against India's interest. Is this a byproduct of keeping an open foreign policy with the whole world? What's the reason that, despite being one of the strongest militaries in the world, the fastest growing large economy in the world, except this quarter growth, LOL, we can't use our hard power against those who are nothing in front of us? Okay. So is India's independent foreign policy the cause of this, the situation we find ourselves in? If you look at the map of the Indian subcontinent, let's do it again. Map of the subcontinent. If we look at the map of the subcontinent, so East Pakistan, West Pakistan, they are not our friends. Okay, they are proxies of the US. Nepal has kind of transformed into a proxy of China. Okay, Afghanistan is a proxy of the US. They are not anti-India as such, but they are a proxy of the US. Bhutan is still friendly with us. Sri Lanka, you could say, proxy of the US. Maldives, proxy of China. Myanmar, there's a fight going on about the fate of Myanmar. So we are essentially surrounded by proxies of more powerful nations. Now, in the world today, there are only 3 nations that have more hard power than India. These 3 nations are China, Russia, and the US. China is about 3.5 times more powerful than India. Russia is about, we could say, 3 times more powerful than China. And the US is about twice as powerful as Russia. So if you give a hard power score, US is 91 or 92, Russia is about 55, China is about 16 or 17, and India is about 4.9. That's the score. So the problem India is facing is that if we remove the influence of China and the US from the subcontinent, India is the undisputed boss of the subcontinent. And none of these nations will dare to do what they're doing. But because they have the umbrella of protection that is given by more powerful nations than India, that's why India is, it finds itself in the situation that it does. So the situation that we face, that Bangladesh does this and Pakistan does that and Nepal does this and Sri Lanka does that and Maldives does that, whatever, this situation is not because of an independent foreign policy. It's because of where we stand vis-a-vis hard power. That's the only factor that matters in geopolitics, is hard power. An independent foreign policy is a good thing. It shows that India is a genuinely sovereign nation. Otherwise, we would not even have an independent foreign policy. So the independent foreign policy is not something that hinders our power projection. The amount of hard power, the lack of hard power compared to these other nations, that's what hinders our power projection capability in our neighboring region. China is like 3.5, 4 times more powerful than us. The US is 20 times more powerful than us, roughly. And they have unlimited power projection capabilities. That's why in our own neighborhood, they're able to have these small nations act like bullies against us and say all kinds of things and do all kinds of actions and all that. The only thing that matters in geopolitics is hard power. You can have any kind of foreign policy you want, but the fact that India has an independent foreign policy is a good thing. It shows that we are still a sovereign nation. We are a genuinely sovereign nation. There are only 4 nations that are genuinely sovereign in the world. Every other nation is not entirely sovereign. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, that's the reason why we are in the situation that we are in. So the solution to the problem is for India to increase its hard power, and the straightforward way to do that is by increasing the size of its economic growth. With economic growth comes an increase in military spending power, which gives you a more powerful military. And economic power plus military power is essentially hard power, plus the amount of nukes you have and all that, but that's another factor. So the solution for India is to keep growing its economy no matter what happens for the next 20 years. Long process, but that's the only solution to India's problems. Okay, Vikram Geopolitical says we can see many Indian origin people taking influential positions in Trump's cabinet. Is Trump trying to impress the Indian American community in the US or some other reason? Trump has no reason to impress anybody, least of all India or Indians. What will he gain by impressing Indians? Indians are not politically significant in the US. Indians aren't a powerful political voting bloc. Indians vote very democratically. You cannot, trying to unify and unite Indians is like herding cats. You can herd sheep, you can even herd cows and buffaloes and other animals, camels, goats, whatever. You can't herd cats. Cats, every single cat has a mind of its own. You simply can't get 20 cats together and make them walk in the same direction. They'll all go in their own way. So trying to unite Indians is like herding cats, and that because of that, Indians are, despite being about a reasonably good percentage of the US population, we are politically insignificant. We simply don't unite, and we are politically, well, the way it is, right? So there's no need for Trump to try and impress Indians or please in the Indian American community in the US. He simply is hiring these people and nominating them for these positions because they're good. Indians are becoming more relevant in the US, even though they're politically insignificant. Individual Indians, lots of them, are very relevant in various ways. Lots of Indian CEOs and so on. And then you have people who are now entering politics. Vivek Ramaswamy is one of them, and so on. And so in Trump's cabinet, who all do we have? Who's of Indian origin? We have JD Vance's wife, who's the second lady. She's not politically active, but yeah, she's a second lady. Usha Vance, she's of Indian origin. Then you have Vivek Ramaswamy. He's going to be Mr. Number Two in the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE. He's going to report to Elon Musk, essentially. That's Vivek. Then you have Kashyap Patel, who is now the boss of the FBI. He's been nominated to be the boss, the director of the FBI. Very powerful position. And then we have Tulsi Gabbard, who's not of Indian origin, but she's a Hindu. And she's going to be the boss of the entire intelligence apparatus in the US. So she's going to be Kashyap Patel's boss. Very powerful, very, very powerful position. So yeah, and I can't think of anybody else, but in case there's somebody, we'll find out. So lots of Indian origin people, lots of many, not lots of, but very some very important positions have been given to either Indian origin people or Hindu people, right? So yeah, it's because they are genuinely good and they're relevant, not because Trump is trying to please anybody. Not at all. I was hoping somebody would ask me questions about UFOs, but I'm not getting any questions about UFOs. So I had to pick a question from 7 months ago. But UFOs are very relevant right now. So this is a question by Sridarsh. What do you think of the UFO disclosure stuff going on in the US? I personally am very suspect. I'd like your take if you have delved into it. So I have those who have been watching. Hopefully, I'm audible now. Hopefully, hello. 1 second, let me see. I think I'm audible now. Yeah, there was a slight disconnection, but we're good now. Okay, UFOs. What's going on in the US? There has been this spate of UFO sightings, UAP sightings, whatever you want to call it, all over the place. And I mean, those of you who know me and who have been following me for some time will know that I am a very big UFO skeptic. I am not a believer. Yes, the truth is out there and UFOs exist and aliens exist. I am an extremely skeptical person. I've said that over and over again. But now I'll tell you what. I'm convinced of at least one thing. This phenomenon is there. Now it's all over the place. Live news broadcasts have captured UFOs flying around in the air, multiple UFOs. And there's videos all over Twitter taken by ordinary people in New Jersey, New York, in the US, and the UK, and all kinds of other places, of these phenomena in the air, these objects that are flying around in the air, in the skies, in space, or wherever it is. So it's very clear now that the UFO or UAP phenomenon is a fact. There's just way too much evidence now to disregard that. So now I can tell you that I agree, after seeing the incredible amount of evidence that's come out in the past few weeks and months. I agree now that the UFO phenomenon is a genuine phenomenon, and it's something that we need to try and understand what on earth is going on. What is going on, right? Now the question is, what are these UFOs or UAPs? So we find people who take out their cell phones and capture these events, these phenomena. You see lights flying around in the sky, you see various shapes of the UFOs. uh, some of them are round, some of them are, I saw a video taken from an airplane cockpit from a commercial jet of a cube shaped UFO zipping past the aircraft. uh, I've seen things of all shapes and sizes, star shaped UFOs with a circle thing going on inside, all kinds of lights. I've even seen in the past 2 3 days videos of UFOs that are shaped exactly like aircraft in the night sky. You can see the shape of the lights. They seem to have wings. They even make the sound that an airliner will make. But the lights are non-standard lights. Commercial aircraft or private aircraft or military aircraft don't have those lights, those colors, and that configuration. And those jet plane like UFOs, they make turns that jet planes can't make, ridiculously sharp turns. So something is going on. Now, how could we possibly explain? What are the possible explanations of these phenomena? One explanation is that the United States, and maybe other countries, some other countries, uh, have developed technologies that we are not aware of. Extremely advanced technology that is kind of on the border between fact and science fiction. Um, Maybe some kind of way of manipulating gravity, perhaps. We're not sure what it is, but the way these things move, it defies uh, our understanding of conventional physics, Newtonian physics. So, and we see some of these objects even emerging from the ocean or diving into the sea, into the ocean. So these could be objects that can uh, navigate the skies, as the space, the sky, the atmosphere, and even the oceans. So what are the possible explanations? One is that governments have access to incredibly advanced technology, and it's also secret programs. Maybe the US, maybe Russia, China, maybe some other countries. That's one explanation. Maybe it's just technology, advanced technology. Maybe Lockheed Martin technology, or NASA technology, or whatever you want to believe. General Atomics, whatever. That's one explanation. The second explanation is that it's actually aliens. But I would, and look, I was in Hong Kong last weekend. That's why I did not do the live stream here. I was on you could say, a diplomatic trip. And I met a gentleman from France there, okay? And that gentleman he has been following this thing as well for a very long time, and he's convinced that there's alien involvement in this, that we have been contacted by alien beings, and they have shared some technology, or we have acquired some technology from crashed craft of theirs, and that's been reverse engineered. And that's how some countries, a few select countries, have access to this technology. That's another explanation that is given. Now, I am a naturally very skeptical person, and I would prefer to give more credence to the possibility that it is simply human technology, but very advanced technology. But something is happening, and whoever is operating this craft, they have decided that now they'll make it very public. Earlier, it was very hard to get high quality or any quality footage of UFOs. Now it's all over the place. Just go on Twitter and you'll see it everywhere. So it definitely exists. These whether they are drones or craft or whatever you want to call them. Let's call them UFOs. These UFOs, they represent extremely advanced technology that regular conventional physics that we are aware of cannot explain. So it's either governments that have somehow developed a technology that are beyond what's taught in physics universities at the highest levels, or it's aliens. There is and there is then talk about, all kinds of speculation on Twitter and all that, maybe we are being considered to become for membership in a galactic federation or something. Look, there's no evidence for that. So something is happening right now. UFOs all over the place in the US, especially over New Jersey, etc. But the government is quiet. They have been found hovering over Air Force bases, military installations in the US, the UK as well. They've been witnessed in Argentina and other countries as well. But we currently have no explanation of what these things are. So maybe some kind of revelation will happen, some kind of disclosure will happen soon. Maybe they're preparing the public for this. We don't quite know. So my point is, let's wait and watch. But it's there. It is definitely true. Can't deny it anymore. Okay. Sumit Agarwal says, what's your view on the BJP officially accusing the US State Department of destabilizing India? Has the US crossed the tipping point on interference? Look, this is definitely not a political matter, it's a geopolitical matter. That's why I'm talking about this. I generally don't comment about BJP, Congress, all that stuff, all the internal politics matter. But in this case, the BJP has officially gone ahead and accused the US State Department and George Soros, etc., of being involved in various activities aimed at destabilizing India. So why have they done this? What's the point of this? Has the US crossed some tipping point or red line? I don't know what to make of it, really. There's a difference between words and actions. If they have crossed a certain red line and they've crossed a tipping point, then instead of talking, we should take some action. The government, which is run by the BJP, the BJP is in power in the government should take some actual action, some steps on the ground aimed at ending the US interference and the steps they are taking to destabilize India. What's the point of putting out statements and engaging in a war of words? What's the point? What are they trying to achieve? What outcome will it bring in? It will simply the only reaction you'll see is denials, and the action on the ground will continue. So I don't understand what this is all about. We all know what the US is doing. We all know what US proxies are doing in the subcontinent and so on. So if the government is aware of it, which it looks like it finally is, then it should take some actual action, steps on the ground. What's the point of words, of engaging in a war of words on Twitter or X? What's the point? I don't get it. It's actually disappointing. I would like to see action on the ground aimed at ending US interference in India and actions that destabilize India via US proxies. Take action on the ground. So much can be done. But right now we're just seeing a war of words. So that doesn't impress me much, unfortunately. Okay, Pranay Paul says, why is it that India, despite its vast talent pool and unique geopolitical challenges, hasn't produced a figure like Elon Musk? Someone who not only drives technological breakthroughs but also shapes narratives and takes bold stances on national issues. Is it due to systemic barriers, cultural mindset, or lack of encouragement for individuals to step into such influential roles? Why don't we see such voices actively addressing and championing Indian concerns on a global stage? There's so many reasons for that. We have a vast talent pool, right? So many brilliant young students graduate every year. And what do? The best of the lot want to just get out of the country, immigrate, emigrate to the US or to the West, wherever. Excuse me. Nobody wants to stay in India because they know that India doesn't respect talent or merit. It's not like we Indian citizens hate talent and merit. It's just that the system is constructed in such a way that merit is sought out and destroyed. I mean, talent is sought out and destroyed, and the system doesn't recognize merit. It doesn't reward you based on your performance. It rewards you based on quotas and whatnot. So, in such a system, the best talent will leave. That's the first reason for that. And then, when it comes to doing business and all that, there are so many problems in doing business in India. The government of India has not done enough to make India a great place for doing business. Lots of Indian entrepreneurs, once they make it big, they move to places like the UAE, to Dubai or the Abu Dhabi or to Singapore, and that's where they incorporate their companies outside of India, so that the Indian taxation regime doesn't apply to them. Imagine, it's better. It makes more business sense for an Indian entrepreneur to incorporate a company in Singapore than to incorporate it in India. Why has the government created this environment and this sort of taxation and so on regime? Why can't we make things better? And then there's all the bureaucracy, the red tape. So it's nothing to do with Indian culture. It's everything to do with the Indian system, the colonial system that we are laboring under, that is breaking the backs of the Indian economy, of the Indian entrepreneur and the Indian people. In the US, they welcome people like Elon Musk. They welcome talented people, and they reward them based on their performance. So the Americans respect merit. They respect talent. It's a meritocratic society. And in the US, you can rise as high as you can based on the amount of work you do and the quality of work you do. And that's why people like Elon Musk, people who want to do great work, they are attracted to places like the US. So why can't we make India that sort of society? I know it's not easy, but why? That's why the government exists. That's why we vote for them. So it's been like a while since this government has been in power, more than a decade now. It's high time they do something about this. So these are the reasons why, despite the vast talent that exists in India, we don't see people like Elon Musk, rising up. We don't see Elon Musk kind of people in India. We don't see a SpaceX in India. Why don't we have a SpaceX in India? Why don't we have multiple SpaceXs? Why don't we have Indian Microsoft, Indian Google, Indian Apple, Indian Tesla? Why don't we have any of these things? Because we encourage, the system is such that it pushes people away. You can't succeed in India. Get out and succeed there. And then we will give you a Padma Shri or Padma Bhushan or something. So we will reward you for leaving India. That's the kind of system we have. It's terrible. That's why. And it's frustrating. But yeah. Okay, space. Divyansh and Ritvik Acharya. Okay. With SpaceX launching rockets almost weekly, India launching rockets almost in every 3 months, no bigger rockets being developed. What do you think India will lose a space race? There seems to be no ambition among the political class. And the second question is, ISRO has updated the timeline of Gaganyaan to 2025 the end of 2025. What could be the reasons, and how should India be more ambitious, citing respite from US? Also, how many space projects India must expect to at least reach Moon or Mars with men, women by the end of this decade? So, where is India in the space race? So, first of all, let's go and see. Okay, how many missions has ISRO done? So let me look for that. Let me bring that on the screen. ISRO missions accomplished, and let me put that on the screen. How many missions has ISRO conducted thus far? Missions accomplished by ISRO. Let's take the question. There we go. So how many rockets has ISRO launched thus far? ISRO apparently has launched 98 rockets, okay, dating back to 1979. From 1979 to 2024 end, ISRO has launched 98 rockets. 98 rockets. Now let's do the same thing for SpaceX. Let's do the same thing for SpaceX. I'm gonna go and search for SpaceX. SpaceX launches. Okay, let me put the SpaceX launches on the screen, shall we? So ISRO 98 thus far from 1979 onwards. ISRO and SpaceX. Where is it? SpaceX was incorporated as a company in 2006, I believe. Since 2006, 419 launches, 381 total landings, 352 total reflights. And if you look at the Starlink data, it's even more ridiculous, right? So that is the situation. ISRO since 1979 has 98 launches. SpaceX since 2006 has 419 rocket launches, 381 landings. We don't even have a reusable rocket that can land on its own. And then the question of reflights doesn't even occur, right? So that is the situation. Okay, where are we? The question, here we are. So where is India in the space race? To be very honest, India isn't a participant in the space race. India is simply trying to achieve some small little objectives. In a few years, we will have a human being orbit the Earth, or maybe 3 people orbit the Earth from the Gaganyaan capsule. That was first accomplished in the 1960s or 50s, wherever it was. 50s, 60s. We are trying to do that now. Then by the end of this decade, by the 2030s, we will have a small space station. That was achieved in the second half of the 20th century. Then by 2040 or something, we'll put a person on the moon. That was also achieved in 1969. And Mars, we're not even thinking about Mars. We don't have an integrated long-term, step-by-step space program. We have one mission to Venus, another mission coming up to Mars in some time. We have a haphazard space program. Our space program isn't aligned with the Indian national interest or India's geopolitical priorities. We don't see space as an integral component of our geopolitical plans. We don't have ambition. I'm not criticizing ISRO. I'm criticizing the government of India. ISRO can only do what the government approves. They can maybe put proposals, but the government has its own way of looking at things. So I have said many times that ISRO doesn't have a significant budget. And the ISRO chief, the head of ISRO, he at some point in time had come on the Ranveer show, Ranveer's podcast. And Ranveer asked this question because I've discussed this with Ranveer many times. So Ranveer asked my question to the chairman of ISRO, Dr. Somnath. And Dr. Somnath said that ISRO often cannot use up all the money that's budgeted, that's allocated to it in its budget. And sometimes at the end of the year, it has to return some of the money to the government. So does it mean that I am wrong and that ISRO has all the budget it needs? It doesn't mean that. It means that only certain missions are approved, and for that a certain budget is given. But the mission, so the project for creating a heavy launch vehicle that is 10 times more powerful than the current GSLV, that project doesn't exist. So then how can there be a budget for that? The mission for developing reusable rockets doesn't exist. So how will you have a budget for that? So the modest little missions that are approved, there is sufficient budget for that only. So there's no ambition from the government. The ISRO engineers and scientists can undertake even very ambitious missions. They've demonstrated the capability. So we are not in the space race. We are simply an afterthought. We, India. Very disappointing to see the government's attitude towards space. Very disappointing. India has the potential to be a major space power, but now we are so far behind. SpaceX is a private company that was incorporated in 2006. And it has launched 4 times more rockets than ISRO has launched since 1979, more than 4 times the rockets. And they now have the most powerful rocket ever constructed, ever designed. And we are still trying, we still have to take the help of SpaceX or Ariane or whatever to launch certain satellites, because our most powerful rocket can't launch, can't handle that weight. Can't we develop more powerful rockets? Of course we can. We can have it ready in the next 3 years if you give the sufficient budget and you have an ambitious timeline. You can develop a rocket that's 10 times more powerful in 3 years. Just see how rapidly SpaceX has developed more and more powerful rockets. The Starship, the first test was in 2019. It was a brick, it was a can on wheel, on 4 legs or 3 legs with a rocket engine at the bottom. It was not even shaped like a rocket. And today in 24, about 5 years later, they have the most powerful rocket in the world. That's how quickly they're able to develop technology. Can't we do that? Of course we can. But we don't want to. The government doesn't want it. So what can I say about it? Yeah, so we can certainly reach the moon. I would say we can reach the moon by 2035. I would say that Chandrayaan 10 should be a manned mission to the moon. We can certainly do that by 2025. We can reach Mars by, let's say, 2045 or something. SpaceX will reach Mars by the end of this decade. So we are way behind. We don't even have a Mars mission right now, a manned Mars mission. No one is even thinking about it. So we are far behind. We certainly have the ability to catch up very rapidly. But the government doesn't seem to care about it. What can I say? That's where we stand right now in the so-called space race. Okay. Ajinkya says, is democracy still alive? Is democracy still alive? There is no such thing as real democracy. Okay? Democracy is a sham. Let me tell you why I say this. What does democracy mean? It means that every citizen of the country who is past a certain age, adulthood, 18, let's say, every citizen of the country gets to participate in the electoral process. Every citizen gets to vote. Every citizen has the right to vote in elections, and every citizen has the right to stand for election. That's what it means. Now, and the theory is that every citizen will vote for a candidate or a party that, according to him or her, is doing the best for the country's national interest. The best possible party. So the theory is that every person understands what the Indian national interest is and knows which party, political party or candidate is best aligned with the Indian national interest. That's the theory. Now, in practice, does any Indian citizen know what the Indian national interest is? Is this something that's taught in school, in college, in university? What is the national interest? No one has the foggiest understanding or idea of what the national interest is. And every nation has a different set of interests. India's national interest will be very different from Israel's national interest, or the American national interest, or the Canadian national interest, or the Chinese national interest. So my national interest is different from the interests of other nations. You have to understand exactly what your national interest is. And that, to understand that, you have to understand international relations. You have to understand geopolitics. You have to understand the current threat scenario and climate. You have to understand economics, basic economics. You have to understand so many things. For that, you need to be educated. And even if you have a master's degree, the Indian education system doesn't teach you any of these things. So, for a democracy to work, really work, each citizen needs to be well educated. Is that the situation in India today? No. And secondly, we are assuming that each citizen will prioritize the national interest and make and vote for the party or the candidate that best aligns with the national interest. But is that the case in India? In India, we vote on the basis of region, on language, on religion, on caste. There are certain voting groups that vote for interests and agendas that don't align with the national interest, maybe oppose the national interest. Is that democracy? This is not democracy, it's a joke. So, what's the solution? So, in Greece, ancient Greece, they say that Greece was the birthplace of democracy, right? In ancient Greece, who could vote? Could women vote? Am I saying women should not vote? I'm not saying that. Okay, by the way, I'm just saying let's take a look at ancient Greece. In ancient Greece, the Greeks probably believed that women were not intelligent. Okay, they probably believed that. So women could not vote. Secondly, peasants could not vote. So who could vote in Greece in elections? Only the wealthy could vote. Only the nobles and the wealthy landowners could vote. That's about 2 to 5% of the population. Because these people actually understood the world. They understood economics. They understood the threats to the nation. They understood international relations and all that. So only those people who genuinely had an understanding of these things were allowed to vote. In ancient India, dating back to even before Greece, who could vote? In ancient India, we had the imperial system. We had emperors and kings and queens, right? You could not vote against them. You could not. You could not vote to depose the emperor. Doesn't work. So what could you vote for? You could vote for, you could elect your local representatives, your local village level administrators and all that, because most people understand what's happening around them. Oh, my garbage isn't being taken out every day, or the drains are not cleaned properly every week or whatever, or there is corruption in the marketplace or whatever. So the local things people understand. So you could vote for your local officials, and that's it. You cannot vote for the people up high. So you could vote for your local officials. You could elect them into power, or you could throw them out of power through your vote. In India, that's the kind of democracy we had in India. It was a hybrid system, imperial system up top, and locally you had democracy. But over here in India, every 5 years you can throw out the government, you can throw out the prime minister. Is democracy still alive? There is no such thing as democracy. There is no real democracy. It's all a sham. India is more democratic than nations like the US. In the US, you have this artificial two-party system, and no matter who you vote for president, there is an unelected power center that always continues to exist, and they always look out for the US geopolitical interest and overall national interest. So, and if a certain president tries to do certain things that are not in line with what they perceive as the US national interest is, then they don't allow the president to really get things done. So nowhere in the world do you have a real democracy. That's simply the fact of the world. Democracy doesn't mean that you get to vote once in 5 years and done. I could vote, so it's democracy. That's a joke. There are so many nations whose entire political system was created by occupiers. Their constitution was written by occupiers. Their legal system, their laws were written by occupiers. They're not allowed to change the constitution, but they're allowed to vote once in 5 years. And only certain kinds of politicians are allowed to exist. Other politicians, they get bumped off. You call that a democracy? There is no democracy in the world. India may be the closest you have to a democracy, a very chaotic democracy. Elections every other week in some state or some place of some part of India. And people who are not even literate, but they will vote for whoever they think is right. And some people vote as a single voting block, vote bank voting and all. So even India is not a proper democracy. This is not how democracy is supposed to be. So, is democracy still alive? No, it was never alive. Democracy never really existed. It's not the best form of government. The best form of government, what is it? It is a benevolent dictatorship, an enlightened benevolent dictatorship. A dictator like Lee Kuan Yew or Chandragupta Maurya or Kanishka the Great or the great Gupta emperors or Lord Ram. Dictators who actually care for the civilization, for the nation, and for the people. And they can get things done with one order. That's the best form of government. The problem with the system of government is that when there's a transfer of power from one monarch or one dictator to another, if the wrong kind of person comes to power, then you are in deep trouble. If somebody like Kans comes to power, somebody like Dhanananda comes to power, you're in deep trouble. So there are pros and cons of all systems. But democracy, nah, it's not alive. It's all a joke. It's all a sham. Okay, I've taken a lot of questions from the comments. Let's take some questions from the live chat. Okay, Nix says, do I think India will benefit from a benevolent dictatorship? Ask yourselves, how was India during the Maratha Empire? India was great. India was doing great during the Maratha Empire. How was India doing under the rule of Ashok the Great, Chandragupta Maurya? India was doing great. India benefited from this rule. How did India do under Kanishka the Great? My goodness, India did supremely well under Kanishka the Great. How did India do under the rule of the Gupta emperors? Golden age of India. How did India do under the rule of, let's say, the Cholas, Rajaraj Chola, Rajendra Chola? Brilliant. India certainly will benefit from a benevolent dictatorship, but we don't have that. So, okay, next, let's take a couple more questions from the live chat. Rajorshi says, why is the US trying to destabilize Georgia? Is the recent FTA with India one of the reasons? Nah, it has nothing to do with India. Absolutely nothing to do with India. Okay, let's go to the map and let's find out where Georgia is. Yes, where is Georgia? Is this nation? Yes. Georgia is a small nation in the Caucasus region. What's the Caucasus region? The region between the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. The Sea of Kashyap and the Black Sea. So this is Georgia. It is south of Russia, north of Armenia, northwest of Azerbaijan, northeast of Turkey. That's Georgia. And Georgia has had its problems with Russia and so on. So what the US wants is a very strongly pro-US proxy puppet government in Georgia. That's what they want. And it's not about destabilizing Georgia. It's about expanding the sphere of influence. It's about power projection. So you take over Georgia by having a puppet regime installed there, then you can expand power further north, right up to Russia's borders. And that's why you do it. So yeah, there is a regime change operation that's going on right now in Georgia. So the short answer is that they are doing this to expand their sphere of influence. That's why they're doing it. Vidhi says, democracy is not working for me. What should I do? It's not working for any of us. What can we do right now? We are powerless. The citizens of the country are powerless. The best you can do is you can elect the best possible government, the best possible candidates, and then hope for things to change. There are certain things the ordinary people can't do a thing about, unless you want to get involved in electoral politics and all. But that's again, then you go inside the system, the democratic system. The ordinary citizen across the world, whether it's India, whether it's the European Union, France, Germany, wherever, US, Canada, wherever you are, the ordinary citizen is powerless to change the system. It's the kind of time we are born in. So there's nothing you can do about it, actually. The only thing you can do is vote wisely. And hopefully over time the system changes and the right kind of system eventually emerges. For the right kind of system to emerge in India, we would want to transition to a presidential form of government. That is way closer to a much more efficient form of government than the Westminster system that we have right now, where we can't even elect directly the leader of the country. You can only vote for your local representative, and the representatives get together, the ones who are elected, to vote to select the prime minister. That's a very indirect form of governance that kind of renders the people powerless to decide their own fate. So the first thing that needs to happen in the transition to a better form of government is a presidential form of government. For that to happen, you will need a very strong leader to come to power. And that will take some time. So the only thing you can do is vote very wisely. Be very careful about who you vote for. Okay. some more questions from the live chat, and I'll go back to the comments after that. Let us see. Dungar Singh Chauhan says, you once mentioned that cell phone radiation is not dangerous, but the newer studies have proved how electromagnetic force from cell phones actually disrupts mitochondrial functioning, leading to DNA mutations and cancer. So I must have said that a year or two ago, based on what information was available then. If newer studies have come out saying something else, then I'll have to check it out. Right? The thing about science is that nothing can be considered to be the permanent forever truth. Okay, the facts that are available today may be replaced by better facts from better research that are available next year or the year after that. Our understanding of the world keeps changing, evolving. More studies are done every year, and then we may discover something new. So maybe a couple of years ago, what we knew was that cell phone radiation, the electromagnetic signals, are not harmful. But maybe they are. Maybe new research is proven. So I haven't seen this, what you're referring to, but I will check it out. I'll not do a Google search right now or whatever search, because it will take time. But yeah, thank you for bringing this to everyone's notice, and I will certainly check it out. And if I find something that does corroborate what you say, then I'll certainly discuss it in probably the next live stream. So appreciate you bringing this to our attention. All right. Let's go back to the comments. We took some questions from the comments, and here we go. Rudrajit Sarkar asks wonderful questions. I think I should do a couple of episodes only from the question he asks, because he asks so many wonderful questions, like 20, 30 of them. So I will take this one. Why didn't the Europeans settle in large numbers in Africa like they did in America and Oceania? So we know that the Europeans settled in the Americas. They conquered the Americas. They replaced the natives. And today, if you look at the Americas, North America, South America, a significant percentage of the population is of European origin. You look at Oceania, which is mainly Australia and New Zealand, a significant percentage, majority of the population is of European origin, right? So they settled down in the Americas. They settled down in Australia and New Zealand. Why not Africa? Why not India? They could have done the same thing. If the Europeans wanted, after they took complete control of India, they could have annihilated the Indian population and they could have settled down in India. And the same thing they could have done in Africa. They had complete control over Africa. Why didn't they settle there? They treated India as a place from where to extract unlimited quantities of resources. And they enriched themselves immensely as a consequence. And the same thing about Africa. Huge continent, the largest continent, full of natural resources. And they exploited that to their heart's content. Why didn't they settle down there? Climate. Very simple. The Europeans, the colonizers, were of what ethnicity? Initially, it was the Spanish. Then it was the Italians, some Italians as well. And you had the Dutch, you had the Danes to some extent, Denmark. And then you had the British, the Anglos, the Anglo-Saxons. These folks, even the Germans, the Belgians, and I'm sure there's more, okay, but you get the point. All European nations. Now, if you look at a map of Europe, yeah, let's go to the map. And let's see what kind of place they live in. They live in higher latitudes. If you look at the southernmost point of Spain, it's at the latitude 36 point something. And typically, it's if you look at England, London, the latitude is 51. They come from very cold places, and they can't. Hot climate isn't good for them. It's not something they enjoy. So about 100,000 Englishmen subjugated and controlled the whole of India, but they preferred to live in hill stations and all, and they did not enjoy the hot climate that exists in the southern parts of India. They didn't like it. Same for Burma, etc. And Africa has all kinds of climate, but very hot climate overall, equatorial and tropical and so on. And then you have the Sahara desert climate and the and so on. So the climate is something that did not agree with them. When it comes to North America, the climate was much more like what they are used to in Europe. right? Especially, well, you know where. And even when it comes to Australia, the majority of the continent is empty. The Europeans have only settled in the southern and eastern parts of Australia, the cooler parts of Australia. If you look at Melbourne, the you can see that the latitude is minus 38. If you look at Sydney, it's minus 33. Brisbane is kind of hot at minus 27. Even that is cool climate actually. And let's not talk about Adelaide because of what happened today, but yeah. And New Zealand is a pretty cold country. So they preferred to settle down permanently in places that had climates that they were accustomed to. And the other places they preferred to colonize and occupy and exploit through extraction, but not settle down permanently. I think it had a lot to do with climate. Right. More questions. More questions. Debo 9 something 9 Debo 9234 says, what's your take on Putin's recent advice to a German entrepreneur to be proud in speaking German instead of English, as he belongs to a sovereign nation that's whose native language is German, not English? Is it trying to reignite the long slept proud nationalistic sentiment among the Germans as their election is on the cards? As we all know, Germany is Europe's economic powerhouse, which is currently going downhill. Look, first of all, there has to be a personal angle. So Putin spent a lot of time in East Germany as a KGB officer. Putin speaks German fluently. So, and he probably, at some level in his heart, may have some kind of affection for the German language. So maybe that's one of the reasons why he said this. The other thing is that look, we all know. I hope you all know. Germany is not a sovereign nation. Germany is under permanent US occupation. So maybe he's just reminding Germany that you were once sovereign, you know, and you should have respect for your own language. So I don't think he's trying to reignite anything. It's not possible. Germany is too deeply under US occupation. The nationalistic sentiment won't be reignited. There's too many immigrants who've come into Germany, and there's no nationalism possible once the percentage of immigrants goes past a certain tipping point or whatever. Yeah, election on the cards, but I assure you, whoever comes to power will be very strongly pro-US in the whenever the next election is. So it will make no difference to Germany's geopolitical stance. It'll go exactly the way the US intends. So maybe he's just trying to remind the Germans to be a little more proud of their own language and all, but it's not going to make too much of a difference in Germany. Okay, Rodrajit Sarkar says, why do our school textbooks try to portray that before the arrival of the British, India was underdeveloped, poor, uncivilized, uneducated, backward, etc.? It's understandable from Western books, but why do Indian books do this? Indian school textbooks. You see, in the Abrahamic world, the West, Western Europe, the West, entire Europe, etc., Europe, America, and all that, these are part of the Western world and they are part of the Abrahamic world. And in the Abrahamic world, there is a before and after division. Where does this division happen? It's before Christianity and after Christianity. So let's say we're talking about England. England becomes Christian in the middle of the first millennium AD. In the second half of the first millennium AD, that's when England starts becoming Christian, and it's almost fully Christianized by 1000 AD. So they regard everything that existed before Christianity as paganism, which is barbaric. And the same attitude exists in all other European cultures. That whatever culture, religion, practices we had before Christianity was paganism, it was barbaric. It's associated with Satanism and all that. So in the old Indo-European culture that we Indians are part of, and we probably are the progenitors of that, in the old Indo-European culture, women had the important role of healers. They were the guardians of the ancient herbal knowledge, which we call Ayurveda in India. and they played important roles as priestesses, as healers, as midwives, and whatnot. All those things. So the traditional knowledge of healing was the domain of women. Okay, and the same was there in Europe. After Christianity became the dominant religion in Europe, Christianity sees the Abrahamic religions see women as inferior. But having this incredible knowledge made them very powerful in society. Women were highly regarded in Indo-European society, right? They were healers. They could save your life. So that gave them a position of power. So what the church did was they termed such women as witches, women who consort with the devil. They have this satanic knowledge and all that. So burned them as witches. So that's how the old culture was destroyed, stamped out. And in the 20th century, in today's world, all that is regarded as paganism. People who have such ancient knowledge were called witches. And everything that came before Christianity, that existed before Christianity, is regarded as barbaric. And the same applies to, I'm sure, Islam as well. I think in Islam they call the pre-Islamic era of Arabia is what, Jahiliya or something, which is like barbaric era or something. So the same was then applied to India through the academic system. So in the academic system, a similar thing was applied. So in India, under the British colonial education system, everything European, everything Western was praised. The British occupation of India was termed as benevolent and something that served to uplift India from barbarity and primitivity. And obviously they will portray Indian culture as backward, misogynistic, uncivilized, uneducated, poor, barbaric, all that in subtle ways. And the same thing has continued after 1947. We haven't changed our education system at all. The same attitudes, the same thing has persisted. So even today, they say that's what Indian textbooks do. That's what they say. That the British came on a great civilizing mission. We Indians were poor, backward, miserable, barbaric, primitive, misogynistic, patriarchal, casteist, whatever else. And the English civilized us. So that's the same thing that you will see in Indian textbooks today. It's the same thing about before and after. In Europe, it's about before Christianity, which is the pagan era, and after Christianity, which is the enlightened era. And in India, it's about before the British came to civilize us and after they civilized us. So we have to do self-flagellation. Take a whip and whip ourselves that we were backward before the British came and they civilized and uplifted us. So we have never decolonized. The process hasn't even started. We are not a post-colonial society. We are still deeply colonized, and our governments have done nothing to change that. So that's why we see what you are referring to, Rudrajit. Okay, Arefin Shuo says, I am from Bangladesh, from a Sunni family. I've been suffering from religious trauma for 2 years since I was 15 years old. My surroundings are all superstitious people. Hard to explain how disgusting it feels. No one knows about it. I learned various scientific things from the internet, including psychology, which helped me to develop a rational and hard mindset. It helped me to not do anything wrong, but I don't know how long I can hold. I'm now 17. This trauma has now created depression, anxiety, PTSD, anger issues in me. Am I the only one in the world who suffered from this kind of disorder that I don't match with anyone? Yeah, I completely understand what you're saying. Look, you're not the only one in the world who feels like a misfit in society. You clearly are a very intelligent person. So you are not the only person in the world. There are others like you. So what do you do about the situation that you find yourself in? You are born in a society that doesn't suit you. You have higher standards. So you can either um, indulge in self pity and feel sorry for yourself and do nothing with your life, or you can take action. What action? What is the objective of the action that you should take? The objective of the action that you need to take is that is to remove yourself from the society and go to a better society. You need to go to a different country, maybe to the Western world, maybe to the United States or wherever it is that you feel is a society that matches uh, you and the standards that you have and the aspirations that you have for yourself. Where will you be able to fit in better, and where will you be able to develop yourself fully and rise to the fullest extent of your potential? You have to first of all identify what society that is, what country that is, and then you have to find a way of reaching that place. So one of the ways to do that is to study hard and get very good marks, and then go to a foreign country for higher education, and then get into the job market there and settle down there, and then eventually get permanent residency or citizenship. So you have to create a game plan for yourself, that in this much time, let's say in 5 years or whatever, I'm gonna go to that place. Because what you're saying, I understand, the kind of society that you are currently in, it is not the right society for you. You're not happy there. You will never be happy there. So you need to remove yourself from there. So that's what I would say. Figure out your game plan, figure out how you will reach where you want to reach, and then work as hard as possible as you can to achieve that. You're clearly an intelligent person, you're clearly a person with much higher standards. So it is certainly possible for you to achieve this and to succeed at that, as long as you are disciplined and you work hard at that. So I don't know the specific circumstances of your life, so I can't tell you anything beyond that. I can't give you more specific advice, but I would say that don't be discouraged, don't give up. You clearly have some fortitude and strength inside yourself, which tells me that you'll be able to work hard and succeed in going to a country or a society where you fit in much better. So all the best, my friend, and I hope to hear from you in the future, where you are happier and way more successful, way more successful than you are right now. And you are young. You're just 17. You have your whole life ahead of you. So don't get discouraged. Be positive, think positive, make your game plan and execute, work very hard, and reach where you're supposed to be, where you're destined to be. All the best, my friend. All the best. Okay, Siddharth Sidhu says, why has our civilization shifted from new inventions and discoveries to merely following established paths of other countries in fields like AI, rockets, etc.? Why aren't we exploring uncharted territories like anti gravity, military robots, Iron Man type suit? Because why not, etc. To gain the first mover advantage, as that can completely change the scenario, as it did when the US developed the world's first nuclear bomb. If you tell somebody today, somebody from the West, for example, that India was once in the past the world's most technologically advanced society, they'll laugh at you. They'll say, "What the hell are you talking about? India is a backward country. India, what? How can India ever have been the most advanced country?" And so on. That's where we are today. Through no fault of ours, we were colonized and occupied by foreign powers for roughly a millennium, roughly, slightly less, but whatever. And they destroyed everything that was good about our society. Now we're trying to rebuild. We are beginning the phase of starting to rebuild. So we are in the very beginning phase. Um, in the past, let's say during the Saraswati Sindhu era, the Harappan era, we were the world's most technologically advanced society by far. We had the best mathematicians, scientists, Brahmagupta, everybody, so many. Um, and even later during the Kushan era, during the Gupta era, etc., we were still the best, technologically most advanced society. And we had the best education system in the world, the university system and all that. And that's why because we had this very strong foundation of a very robust education system in a very open-minded society, because of the culture and civilization that we have. That's why we're at the forefront of scientific and technological innovation. That's why we were there. And geopolitically, you will be at the top only if you are technologically at the top. Otherwise, you'll always be a second-rate power and an occupied or colonized power, a non-sovereign power. So it is imperative for a nation that is ambitious. It's imperative for such a nation to be technologically at the forefront of the world. So now today, why are we following in other people's footsteps? If you look at ISRO, we're trying to do things that were done in the 1960s, right? If you look at other industries, we are way behind. We are still trying to develop a jet engine, the kind of jet engine that was developed long ago. We are trying to follow in other nations' footsteps. We are trying to develop a twin engine aircraft, fighter aircraft, which is good. I'm not saying we should not do that. But everything we are doing is what others have already done long ago. Where's the innovation? Where's the cutting edge research? Why aren't we doing some research that nobody else has done before? That, first of all, is because much of our defense industry is in the hands of the government, which means very bureaucratic. Bureaucrats don't understand science or anything. They just want things to remain the same. They don't like change. That's one reason. Secondly, we have an abysmally poor education system that doesn't teach you how to do research, that doesn't teach you how to innovate. It discourages you from innovation. It identifies people who want to innovate and destroys them. It wants conformity. It wants sameness. It teaches you concepts and things that should have been taught 20 years ago. It doesn't teach you the new research that happened in the last 20, 30 years. It only teaches you old concepts and so on. So the education system is very poor. That's one of the reasons why we are not innovating. And secondly, uh, because of the business environment and climate that we have, that's why private companies aren't able to uh, come to the forefront of innovation in areas like space research, etc., like SpaceX in the US. We don't have any SpaceX in India. We have a couple of small private companies that are trying to do something, but they have not been treated well. One of the companies was trying to develop reusable rockets, but they're now selling missile technology, solid state missile technology, solid fueled missile technology to other countries. Sad state of affairs. So the system in India prevents you from innovating. It doesn't want you to rise too high. Tall poppy syndrome. If somebody rises too high, chop them down to size. The government needs to change these things. The government needs to make India competitive. The government needs to throw out the new education policy and completely transform the education system, completely transform it. But it's not happening. So it's not going to change for a while, for a long while. Sovik Arya says, as I've seen all your videos possibly on YouTube, really, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. I really do. So I've come to realize that things are in cycles. History repeats itself in cycles. And conflict is inevitable. Yes. How should we prepare as young people for the future other than what's taught to us institutionally? What are the things that we must do? That's a very good question. The only constant in life is change. Things keep changing all the time. The world keeps changing. We cannot be left behind. So, history repeats itself in cycles, and conflict is inevitable. The history of humankind is a history of conflict and warfare. And we've passed through a period since 1945 of reasonable long-term peace, which is unnatural. I mean, there have been wars and all that in various parts of the world, but for much of the world, there has been a lot of stability and peace. And it's been way too long, actually. It's been very unnatural. So you can now expect a period of increased instability, conflict, perhaps war. We don't want that. I would never wish that for the world, but we know that that's the nature of the world. So, how can young people prepare for that? First of all, we have to understand, you have to understand this, that your educational degree doesn't count for anything when your nation is at war, or when your nation is really striving to rise fast. Your educational degree counts for nothing. Even as things are, in the next 5 to 10 years, nobody will care about your educational degrees. In the US, there are so many companies already that don't care what a job applicant's educational degree is. They test the job applicant, they test the skills of the job applicant. And even if you have never completed high school or whatever, as long as you have the skills required for the job, they will give the job. So the first thing you have to understand is that forget about degrees, acquire skills, understand what your aptitude is. Maybe you're good at engineering, maybe you're good at carpentry, maybe you're good at whatever. Acquire skills. You see, Alexander the Greek had conquered, he had he had conquered territories all the way to Persia and the border of India before he was at the age where you get a BSc or BA degree. Yeah, he had already that many achievements by the time you get your bachelor's degree, right? um, Skandagupta had fought dozens of battles against the Huns and saved India multiple times before he was at the age where you get your bachelor's degree. People had actual achievements in the past by the time they were 18. Today in today's world, even at the age of 25, you have no achievements. You're just starting off. Now what do I do? I got my bachelor's degree, master's degree, maybe my MBA. Now what do I do? And even at that age, you don't have actual skills, you just have a degree. So understand that in the future, very near future, the nation will need skills, not degrees. Society will need skills. India is going to have to really buckle up and work really hard to survive in the current geopolitical climate. And it's going to be an increasingly uncertain geopolitical climate. And for the economy to thrive, we will need people with skills, not degrees. Your degrees count for nothing if you can't do the job. So acquire skills, understand yourself first of all. What am I good at? What am I really good at? What am I great at? And then acquire your degrees. If you want, acquire your skills. Along the way, you can study for your degree and get a degree as well, but acquire skills. Secondly, you have to be physically fit. If the nation is at war, you have to be physically fit. So you have to be physically fit, you have to have skills. Degrees don't count for much. And you have to be able to learn skills fast, new skills. Sometimes old skills are of no use and you will have to learn new skills because technology is changing very fast. So you have to learn how to learn fast. That is also a skill you to acquire. So prepare yourself in this manner. Learn how to learn how to have an open mind. Don't have a closed mind. Learn fast. Don't take 6 months to learn SQL. Learn it in 12 hours. Just an example. Learn very fast and execute fast. Become action oriented, not talk oriented. We need people of action in the country. We Indians love to talk and argue all day. So we need to transform ourselves as a society, and obviously we need to have high standards. High standards always. Raise your standards. So these are the things young people need to do to be prepared for all eventualities in the coming period of geopolitical turmoil, which could last 20 to 50 years, who knows? Yeah. So, yeah, that's what we need to do. Okay, let's take some more questions from the live chat. McLevin says, why don't Sindhis have a state in India? Because Sindh lies west of India in present day Pakistan. It's Pakistan occupied Sindh. Temporarily, Pakistan occupied Sindh. So, the Sindhis are an ethnic group whose homeland is Sindh. They have a state, but it's currently occupied by an artificial temporary nation. You can't create a new state for them in what currently is India. What we need is to have Sindh back in India. In the national anthem, we speak about Sindh, but it's not in India. So we need to make that happen sooner rather than later. Grimzobad says SAR reservation in private sector. SAR, please, 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 not that. We need to end reservations. We need to have only merit. And yeah, we know that there are various communities and sectors of Indian society, sections of Indian society that are financially backward and so on. So you can give them um, financial assistance based on their financial status, financial condition. You can give them free education throughout their education life cycle. That's the kind of assistance you can give to people who are financially backward. But just because of you are born in some community, you get reservations for the rest of your life. What nonsense is that? That is what destroys nations. So we don't want reservations in private sector. SAR, that is a very bad idea. Very bad. Very bad. Is very bad idea. Okay. Sneha says, is it true that if Jerusalem falls, Jammu will also fall? Um, I'm not sure what the connection is between Jerusalem and Jammu. Jerusalem is in Israel, and Jammu is in northern India. What's the connection? I'm not sure what the connection is. So, no, if Jerusalem falls, why does Jammu have to fall? I don't. There's no connection as far as I can see. Okay, Naveen says, will AI replace IT jobs in India? What will be the future of students who have recently joined IT jobs? Um, AI will replace a lot of IT jobs. For example, um, I mean, AI, what Chat GPT or Grok or whatever, can do a lot of programming for you. You just enter the prompt and tell them what you need to be done, and they will write the whole Python script or JavaScript or whatever they want, whatever you need, and you can get it done like that. And you may need to tweak the code a little bit or whatever, but something that would take hours can now be done in seconds. So the kind of job that would take 20 people in the past, you can just get it done by one person with the help of AI. So AI will definitely, you know, replace a lot of IT jobs in India. So what's the future of students who have recently joined IT jobs? They need to reskill and find something, find a sector where AI will not be able to take away jobs from. There are so many sectors. I mean, when you have got a master's degree or something, you aspire to be in an office with glass windows, and you want to be in an air conditioned room, and you want to be at a desk with a laptop or a computer, and that's the kind of comfortable job you want. But those jobs will go now. So you have to be willing to do jobs that are not as comfortable but that will pay you well. There are lots of real world problems out there, and those problems need solutions, which means jobs. So so you will have to migrate to other things, maybe real jobs which require your hands, you to work with your hands, perhaps. Maybe go into road construction. I mean, that can pay really well. I'm not saying become a construction laborer. I'm saying start a construction company, employ lots of people, or infrastructure building, or engineering jobs. Engineering, we need to build ships, we need to build cranes, we need to build aircraft, drones, whatnot. We need so many jobs in these sectors. So when the IT jobs start drying out, people will have no option but to either sit at home jobless, or to reskill themselves and go into the sectors and industries where AI cannot take away jobs from. So that's what students will need to do. I know it's not your optimum solution. You want to be sitting in an AC room in a nice glass walled building, sitting at a desk with a laptop, but that's not the future of the world. So so there is a solution. There are lots of solutions and options, but it's not gonna be easy. You have to first of all reskill yourself, and then you have to be willing to take up a job that was not your first choice, but it's something the country needs. So the solution is, ask yourself, what are the sectors in which the country needs jobs, which AI cannot take over, and then go into that. Okay. Some more questions. Nishant says, is it possible for the SARC nations to have a co- a common currency like the EU has? What could the challenges be? SARC is defunct. SARC is obsolete. SARC is dead. SARC will never be revived. So no point. Why is SARC dead? Because of Pakistan, an organization or grouping of nations in which the two largest nations can't get along together. That organization can never, does not have a future. And India is the top dog, obviously, in the subcontinent, the largest nation and most powerful nation by far. And India doesn't want to be at the same table as Pakistan. Why would we want to be at the same table as a terrorist nation? SARC is finished. SARC is dead. So India can get, I mean, we have bilateral, multilateral nation relations with all of the other nations. Why do we need SARC for that? So SARC is over. SARC is dead. We haven't had a SARC summit in many years because India has refused to go for that. So it's over. So what's the point of having a common currency? Eventually, you may have a common BRICS currency or something, possibly or not. We'll see about that. But a SARC currency is not going to happen. Okay, I see a question about Syria, which I've already addressed in the beginning of this episode. So you can watch back and take a look at what I said there. Dungar Singh Chauhan says, are Russian scientists more advanced than Western scientists? I've read quantum biology, for example, was there in Russia before it came to the West. Soviet scientists used to be some of the best in the world. In India, in the 20th century, in the 50s, 60s, etc., if you were a physicist or you were studying to be a physicist, you had to take lessons in basic Russian, because a lot of the literature of physics, the literature is in academic research papers in physics. Many of them were written in Russian, and some of the best papers were written in Russian. So Russia had excellent scientists, not just in physics but in all kinds of other fields, and they had some of the best technologies of the 20th century. And even now, you have excellent scientists in Russia. I'm not sure about quantum biology. Quantum biology is kind of interesting field. Yeah, but yeah, I'm sure even today there are sectors in industry, in engineering, and even in pure sciences where Russians will be better than the West. For example, in pure mathematics, Russian mathematicians are some of the best. One example is obviously Grigory Perelman, right? The guy who solved the Poincaré conjecture, and so many more. So it's definitely very likely there are lots of there are lots of Russian scientists who are much better than Western scientists, and there will be research labs, etc., that are superior to the labs that you have in the same field or same domain in the West. Okay. What other questions do we have live? The live chat. Bangladesh I've already covered, so I'll not take it again. Okay. Mr. 88er says, what are your thoughts on the recent emergency declared by South Korea? So just this past week, the South Korean president declared martial law and then had to withdraw it just a few hours later. So what happened is that the guy who is kind of the Donald Trump, you can compare him to Donald Trump in the US. He's kind of the South Korean Donald Trump, somewhat. And his party is kind of the MAGA party in South Korea. Okay. So this guy goes on TV late at night and announces that I am declaring martial law. But he made several huge blunders. Look, when a president declares martial law, it is called a self coup, an auto coup, which means he is consolidating his power by shutting down all political activity and taking control of the country militarily. So if you want to do that, here's what you have to do. Before you make any announcements, you have to send the military to the parliament building and secure it, seal it, shut it down. Don't let anybody enter or exit. If it's late at night, nobody's inside. So don't let anybody come inside. Number one. Number two, secure all the prominent opposition leaders. I'm just saying, I'm not advocating anybody do this, but that's how a coup is done. Where's the book? I don't know where it is. It's somewhere here. Dr. Edward Luttwak's book, Coup d'etat, practical handbook. So first of all, you shut down the parliament. You send the army there. Make sure nobody can come inside. Secondly, you locate all the prominent opposition leaders or anybody who can be a problem for you, and you arrest them and put them in a nice five-star hotel. Let them chill there, but you arrest them. Make sure that they cannot communicate with the public or go anywhere. Put them in house arrest or whatever. I'm not advocating anything harsher than that, okay? But in a coups, much harsher things can happen. And then you take control of all the news stations, of all the news agencies, of all the newspapers, of all the big media outlets, TV stations, radio stations, whatever. And you take control of each of these. Send your armed forces there. Once you take full control of the country in this manner, then you go on TV and declare martial law. You don't do it the other way around. That you first declare martial law and then you try to secure everything. How amateurish is that? So this guy, the president of South Korea, he did the wrong in the wrong sequence. He first went and declared martial law, but then the all the lawmakers, they went to the parliament and they passed a resolution or whatever saying that we are ending martial law. And because of the technicalities, martial law ended immediately. So I sit in in an airplane. I had just heard that martial law is declared. I take off on what, a 5.5 hour flight. When I land, I get the news on my phone. Martial law is over. What a joke! What an amateur that guy is. So at the end of the day, it has achieved nothing. I'm sure there is much more to this than what I'm telling you. What are the geopolitical considerations? What is the US angle? Because South Korea is an occupied country, it's under US occupation, it's a US proxy state. I still haven't studied the deeper geopolitical implications of this and where does the US stand in this. So maybe I'll look into it and we can have the same discussion in the next episode. But as of now, I can tell you this, that it was a complete blunder by the South Korean president. So yeah, good question there. Let's take some more questions. Okay, let's take this question from Vidhi. Vidhi says, why can't we ordinary citizens, excuse me, come together? Can't we ordinary citizens come together and build an autonomous university for ourselves, where the merit-based system is applicable with Bharat's interest in the forefront? It's possible. You need to, first of all, bring together a large number of like-minded citizens who have the same objective that you're putting over here. A lot of people don't have this objective. So first of all, we need to bring together a large number of like-minded citizens. Then you need to have each of them pool a certain amount of money, not a small amount of money, for this cause. Then you need to appoint somebody who's a trustee of the money, a person who you can genuinely trust, who will not embezzle the money, right? Then you need to have a person who's the leader, who will oversee the construction. I mean, the formation of the universe, not the physical, not just the physical construction, but the actual formation of the university. What kind of university will it be? How large will it be? What courses will be taught? What departments will be there? How will we do the hiring? What are the criteria for hiring? What kind of people do we not want as professors? What kind of people do we want as professors? So many things have to be decided and considered and finalized. So you need some real high quality leaderships, not some random person who decides, I am the leader and I'll decide. This is all. So you can already see how complex it's becoming. Then if you have sufficient funding, you will need to purchase land. And I'm not sure what government approvals you need to create a private university, but it's certainly possible. So you will have to navigate the red tape and get the approvals from the government, which will need political connections, possibly, I don't know. And then you have to see what then you have to ensure that it gives genuine value to the students. I am not sure whether India's private universities need to have reservations. In case they don't, then you can certainly do it. So it is something that is feasible, is very difficult. First of all, to raise the funds, a few hundred crores, maybe a few thousand crores, you may need to raise. Not a small amount of money. You need to have the right person who will manage the money, which is again very difficult. Then you need the right kind of leadership who really understands academia and education. That person needs to be the overall director of the project. And yeah, it's possible. It's a big endeavor, a difficult endeavor. It's first of all very difficult to get the right kind of people together, a critical mass of people. Overall, it's possible. We have 1.4 billion people. We can certainly find the right kind of people to do this project. So it's possible, but difficult, not impossible. Okay, let's go back to the questions that we had from the comments. Okay, this is by Mudgal C. Miss. Why is suffering? I think what she's trying to ask is, why is there suffering in life? That's a deep philosophical question, but a question that's relevant to all of us. Why is there suffering in life? Now, to answer that question, let's first clarify what is suffering. Suffering is pain, right? The sensation of pain, which doesn't have to be physical pain by banging your hand over here or something. It could be psychological pain, it could be spiritual pain. Pain which is non-physical generally comes from loss. When you lose something, say you're 12 years old, you've lived 12 years on the planet and everything is nice and it's your childhood is generally happy if you have good parents and so on, so everything is well and good. You live in your house and you go to school and you go to the garden to play or the park to play and you have video games and whatnot. You have some nice friends, hopefully. So it's a nice, happy childhood. Now, the same person, when you're 25, you're out of school, college, university, you're now working. Your childhood is a thing of the past. You may have moved to a different city. You no longer see your parents regularly. You've lost touch with many of your friends because they're also all working. You've experienced some loss. It gives you some sadness. But now I have to work now for a living. And I'm no longer able to enjoy the life I had just a few years ago. Sense of loss there. Now, let's say you're in your 40s. You are completely disconnected with your friends. Maybe you're married or whatever. Maybe you have a kid or kids. At some point in time in your life, you will lose your parents. That is a shattering loss. Shattering, gut wrenching, horrible. The worst sensation you can have, but everybody will go through that. You're gonna, it's bound to happen. You lose that. You feel adrift. The two people who always took care of you, who you could always rely on, are gone. You feel lost. That is, well, that's an example of suffering. By the time you're in 50s, the world has changed. The kind of movies you used to watch no longer exist. You can only see them in archival footage. Today's movies, you don't understand. Very different sensibilities. The music you used to enjoy as a kid, very different music today. The kids, the youngsters of today, you can't understand them. You can't relate to them. The old world you've lost. Maybe the place where you grew up, the home, the neighborhood, it has been redeveloped. Your home has been pulled down, bulldozed. The whole neighborhood is gone, and maybe now you have apartment complexes there. You can't even recognize the place anymore. The world, the physical world of your childhood has been bulldozed. That's pain. That's loss. Now you're in your 60s and 70s. Many of your friends have died. The people who you grew up with, they no longer exist. Then you're in your 80s. Almost nothing of your childhood and of your adult life exists anymore. You have very few people that you can connect with, mostly people of your age. So much loss. All of this is suffering. Change is suffering. Loss is suffering. That's why life is suffering. And it's inevitable. Every single person goes through this. So that's why life is suffering. But it's up to you how to deal with it. It is inevitable that every person who lives to a certain age will go through all these things. So does it mean that there's no point in life and it's only pain and suffering? No, it's not like that. You know it's going to happen to you. You know everybody goes through this. So you prepared for it mentally, and you still need to find meaning in life by doing things, by connecting with people, by allying with people, by making friends, by creating things for society, by creating value for society. So, yes, you will experience loss over and over, but you also create value when you find meaning in creating good things for society and providing value to society. And at the end of the day, if on your last day, when the last day comes, and by the time you have provided more value to society than you've taken from it, from society, then I think you've lived a good life. So that's just the nature of life. And yeah, it is suffering. You do suffer, it's painful, but there's a lot of happiness and joy depending on the choices you make and the actions that you undertake. So you can see it two sides of the same coin. You can see it positively, you can see it negatively, but it is what it is. So the amount of pleasure and joy and happiness or pain that you experience in life, some of it is you can't change, but a lot of it is entirely up to you and your attitude and how you approach life. Right? Okay. Um, if humans can't see ultraviolet rays, I'm sure it's UV. If humans can't see ultraviolet rays and other rays, how did we create tools to measure these things? So, there are two kinds of invisible light: infrared and ultraviolet. There's the rainbow spectrum, right? Red, Vibgyor, violet, indigo, green, Vib, blue. Okay, the VIBGYOR, those colors. So if we go past the red end of the spectrum, you go into infrared territory. And if you go beyond the violet end of the spectrum, you go into ultraviolet territory. These are also light rays, but they're invisible to our eyes. We cannot detect that. So how was this discovered is the question, right? How how did we create tools to measure or discover this? So infrared light was discovered in, I think, 1800 or thereabouts. So infrared was discovered in 1800, and ultraviolet was discovered the next year in 1801. So the guy who discovered infrared light, his name was William Herschel, and he did a bunch of experiments that which involved sunlight. So what he did was he took a prism. You know what a prism is? It's this, the prism, right? It's made of glass. So he took a glass prism and he had a ray of sunlight fall upon it, which created a spectrum, which split the ray of light, the white light, into its component colors. And this spectrum, then he projected it on a table. And over there, at every different color of light, he put thermometers there to measure the temperature of each color of light. Okay. And he was able to isolate specific colors by having slits and all that. So he passes the sunlight through the glass prism. He has the spectrum projected on a nearby table. He has thermometers placed in each of these different parts of the spectrum: violet, green, red, etc. And he measured the temperature of each of these various colors of light. And he found that the temperature increases from the violet end of the spectrum towards the red end of the spectrum. So violet is cooler, and then as you go towards red, it gets warmer and warmer. That's what he discovered. And then he said, what if I put a thermometer beyond the red end of the spectrum? What happens there? But there is no visible light. And he found that it's even hotter than the red light, than the red end of the spectrum. So that's how we discovered infrared light. So the next year, there was another guy called Ritter, Johann Ritter, who said that if this happened, let's do it the other way around. Okay? So I think it was a German. He did it the next year. So what he did was he did a series of experiments, not with thermometers, but with silver chloride. Silver chloride is a chemical that darkens when it's exposed to light, not to sunlight, but to any kind of light. So what he did is that he also used a glass prism to split the spectrum of sunlight, and he placed silver chloride in different parts of the spectrum. And he noticed that it darkened more quickly towards the violet end of the spectrum. And then he took the silver chloride and he put it beyond the violet end of the spectrum. And then he saw that it it became even darker. Okay. So even though there is no visible light there, it became even darker. It was an even more intense reaction in the invisible part of the spectrum beyond violet. And that's how ultraviolet light was discovered. So that's how, in the very beginning of the 19th century, infrared as well as ultraviolet light was discovered through this scientific methodology. Okay. Vikram Geopolitical says, your views on masterpieces like Interstellar not getting a single screen in India and third rate cinema like Pushpa 2 getting all the attention. When will the Indian audience be served with good cinema? Okay, I have no idea what Pushpa 2 is. I have not seen it. I have not even heard of it until now. I don't watch all these movies. I love cinema, by the way. I like good movies. So I don't watch any of these Indian movies because most of them are, I don't like them. Uh, so when will when will the Indian audience be served with good cinema? The Indian audience will be served with good cinema when the majority of people like good cinema. You are getting what you like. It's not about me, I like better cinema than the rest of the Indian audience. It's about the average preference. It's about the preference of the average Indian person. The average Indian person, the majority of the Indian people prefer things like whatever you're talking about, Pushpa 2 or whatever is whatever comes on the OTT platforms and all that. I can't stand those things. But that's what most Indians like. Now, if I can't stand it, it's my problem, right? Most Indians love it. So they get to watch it. And more such content is created. So the market seems to be democratic, more or less. What people like, they're given that because that makes the most money for the producers. I certainly was looking forward to watching Interstellar again. I think it was released many years ago, about roughly a decade or so ago, roughly 2014, 2016, somewhere around that. I watched it on the big screen. It's one of the best movies I've seen in my entire life. Loved it. Not just the physics part and the science part of it, but also the overall story. It was great, wonderful. And when I heard that it's going to be re-released this year, I thought, let me go and watch it again. And I would have given good money to watch it again on the big screen. But not a single screen in India showed the movie. Very disappointing. And I can't just go to another country just to watch a movie, right? I mean, I can't justify that expense. Go to what, Singapore or Hong Kong to watch a movie and come back. Imagine that. So yeah, I won't be able to watch it. Very, very disappointing. But the Indian audience loves certain kind of content, entertainment content, and that's why they get it. So hopefully in the future, our audience, our people will develop better taste in cinema and entertainment. Hopefully in the future. Okay, let's take a couple more questions from the live chat. Connoisseur of the game says, what does a probability density function, how does it work? Can you please explain it? Okay, you're talking about psi, right? The wave function. So the wave function is a complex function. It has the imaginary component, which has I, and it denotes the probability of finding a particle in a certain point in space. Not space-time, space. In quantum mechanics, we don't do time. In quantum mechanics, time is a classical parameter, an external parameter, a classical parameter. The probability function psi, it tells you what is the probability of finding a certain particle at a specific point in space, 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional space. Let's do 3-dimensional, right? So that's what it tells you. It maps the probability space, the probability across space of finding the particle. Now, how does it work? The wave function itself by itself doesn't tell you anything, but when you normalize the wave function, when you normalize it, that's when it actually gives you the probability of finding the particle. So I cannot explain it beyond this without resorting to equations. But what I can tell you is that it gives you the probability of finding the particle at a specific point in space. So it's a fuzzy thing. Okay, if you look at the orbitals of, let's say, the hydrogen atom, then you get these shapes. Okay, depending on the configuration on what state the atom is in, whether it's the ground state or the first excited state or whichever state. Okay, and you get different shapes of the orbital. So these orbital shapes come from the wave function, which is the probability density function. And of course, we have the observer effect, in which the entire thing collapses to a point because of an observation, which is a different story. So that's what I can tell you in brief without going into diagrams or equations. Okay. Um, Saransh says, do you believe in celibacy? Celibacy. It's a heated argument nowadays. Please reply. Look, celibacy is not for everybody. Most humans want to not be celibate. Most of whether you want to procreate or just enjoy the pleasure of not being celibate, it's not for most people. It's only for very few people with who want to achieve great things and who have great willpower, like Gautam Buddha or whatever. Um, I don't. Uh, Beyond that, I don't know what to say. Okay, I don't think it's for everybody. It's for very few people. It is said that if you remain celibate for a certain amount of time, then your willpower, everything increases, improves, all that. Well, I am no expert in that, so I'll rather not comment about that. Yeah, I'm no expert in this matter. John V says, what's your take on Donald Trump's recent tweets on BRICS and BRICS currency and de-dollarization? BRICS nations, yeah. So Trump recently tweeted that if the BRICS nations try to create a BRICS currency and move away from the US dollar, then he's going to destroy them. He's going to impose 100% tariffs on imports coming from those nations, which will make the US market impossible to enter for these nations. That sort of thing. So he has essentially thrown down the gauntlet and given an ultimatum to BRICS that if you even think of de-dollarizing, I'm going to destroy your economies. Now, how feasible is this? The US needs a lot of Chinese products, right? A lot of the stuff that is sold in the US, products that are sold in the US, are manufactured in China. So all of that is being imported by the US from China. And these are things the US market needs. Now, if you put 100% tariff on that, then the prices will double overnight. Is that not going to crush the US economy as well? So a lot of what Donald Trump says is hyperbole. He exaggerates a lot, but he can certainly do that to nations like India, from which India doesn't export anything comparable to the volumes that China exports to the US. And if Indian manufactured products are taxed at 100% and they become twice as expensive, it won't hit the US market that badly. So maybe he can do it to nations like India, smaller economies like India, but definitely not to China. So I think he's simply trying to bully. Look, Trump has that personality. He will try to bully you. So he's trying to bully the BRICS nations. It can work with some nations, but it will be counterproductive if applied to nations like China. All right, let's take maybe one more question. What do we have? Let's see. Om Bekelikar says, will the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria affect India's interests in Armenia? Look, the terrorist outfit, whatever you want to call it, that has taken over Syria is a Turkish and American proxy. So this significantly strengthens Turkey's geopolitical stance in the region, power projection abilities. It is great for Erdogan, and if Turkey feels stronger and bolder, then it also helps Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan, you can say, is a Turkish proxy. Turkey, Azerbaijan are like bye, okay, Turkic brothers. And Azerbaijan is Armenia's mortal enemy, and so is Turkey. And Turkey and Azerbaijan want to wipe Armenia essentially off the map of the world and create a pan-Turkic, pan-Turan corridor. So if you look at all of these connections, then the fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime in Syria greatly strengthens Turkey in the region, which will obviously have a positive effect on Azerbaijan. And combined together, it will be bad for Armenia and make Armenia feel even more insecure. And we have interest in Armenia. Russia has interest in Armenia. And India and Russia are kind of working together in some ways in Armenia. So it can certainly affect India's interest in Armenia. Very interesting question that you asked, because it involves all those connections. All right, we are done with today's live stream. Lots of questions have taken. Thank you so much for all the really interesting questions you ask, especially in the comments and even in the live stream, live chat. I really appreciate that. So I'm going to end this live stream over here. Take care, all of you. Keep asking questions, keep raising your standards, and I will see you definitely in next weekend in the next live stream. Thank you, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.